Hello and welcome to episode 26 of the GuildMag podcast. As you can see this week, I am not joined by Ali. I am once again joined by two special guests. One of them you've seen before and one of them is a brand new face. So say hi, Sherry and Chris.
Hello.
Hi, Sherry and Chris.
So yeah, that's Sherry, also called Star Conspirator, so I'll probably switch between the two. There's Chris / Drax, who you already know. So yeah, Ali can't be here this week, unfortunately. She's a bit unwell, so she likely won't be here for the next couple of weeks. But we'll try and find some awesome guests to fill in instead. On top of that, Lauren Explore is on hiatus until she's feeling a bit better. So if you fancy dropping her a message on Twitter, let her know that you wish her well, then I'm sure she'd appreciate that. But today we have got quite a lot to talk about. Because we weren't here last week, we're going to be talking about the Dragonhunter specialisation and the Necro Reaper elite specialisation that was released this week. So it should be a good show. We've got a lot to talk about. But before that, since you guys haven't seen Sherry before, we're going to get her to introduce herself. So do you want to tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do at GuildMag, that kind of shebang?
I'm Sherry or Star. I answer to both, actually. I'm a writer and a gamer, and for GuildMag, I write about video games.
Yay!
Yay! It's the best of both worlds.
So, yeah, did you play the original Guild Wars?
I did. I started playing right after I started grad school because it was a way to zen out and ignore all my homework. So I want to say 2009 was when I started the original Guild Wars.
Very good.
And then migrated. Currently migrating my characters from Guild Wars 1 to Guild Wars 2, which is an undertaking because I'm addicted to them. So, yeah. Eventually I'll have 24 of them.
That's,
I don't know what I'm going to do with them all.
We're going to be talking about the Dragonhunter and the Reaper today. But before that, as always, we'll do our little gem store news shebang. So there hasn't been that much going on, actually. The only thing that's really come out in the gem store aren't any new items. It's the return of Belinda's Greatsword, which I'm actually seriously considering picking up because I didn't. And Rox's Quiver and the Metallurgic Die Kit. So get them while you can. So before we start talking about our stuff today, I just wanted to bring out some blog posts we've had on GuildMag over the last couple of weeks that just kind of wanted to start sharing them with you guys. So the first one was written by Toz, I think not this week but last week, and it's called Win Me Over Heart of Thorns, and he's one of our editors at GuildMag, and he used to play Guild Wars 2 a lot, and he kind of stopped about a year into its release and launch because he enjoys it, but it's not necessarily everything he wanted it to be, and he's kind of a hardcore raider on WoW and Final Fantasy, that kind of thing.
That would do it.
Yeah, so he kind of takes a look at what Heart of Thorns would need to bring for him to properly come back to the game, because I think he's planning on buying the expansion, but he don't knows if it'll necessarily keep him invested in it a couple of months down the line. So I think it's a really interesting read from a perspective of someone who knows what's going on in the game but doesn't necessarily play it at the moment, which is quite a unique perspective, I think. And then the second one, I see I'm trying to log into the chat at the same time as doing this, and I'm trying not to let you guys hear me typing. It's going so... there we go, I'll just do it and get it out of the way. So the second one is an article written by me, because I'm awesome. So it's called Battle of the Summer Expansions, and it's all about comparing Heart of Thorns with Final Fantasy XIV's upcoming expansion called Heaven's Ward, which is releasing this summer. As I'm an MMO gamer, and I enjoy both kind of the casual aspect of Guild Wars 2 and then the hardcore aspect of other MMOs like Final Fantasy XIV, I kind of compare what the expansions are going to bring to the table and what they can kind of learn from each other. And at the end of it, I kind of come to a conclusion about which I think is better. So if you want to know that, then go and read it. You're not going
to spill it?
Yeah, no, I'm not going to spill it. I can just tell everyone's just dying to find out. So definitely check out those 2 articles if you've got time. They are well worth a read. And if you fancy contributing to GuildMag as a writer or an editor especially, we are in need of you. If you fancy joining one of the oldest Guild Wars 2 fan sites that's out there, we have been going for 5 years now, half a decade. Then
Yay!
then you can head over to guildmag.com/join or send an email to apply@guildmag.com for more information. For writers and editors, you need some level of workable knowledge with the English language and that kind of thing, but you don't need to be a pro or anything like that. We've got people who can support you. I mean, Sherry can attest to that. She's just awful at writing, aren't you, Sherry?
I've been doing it for so long, it just never clicked.
So definitely check it out if you are interested in joining GuildMag at all. And yeah, that's my kind of thing out of the way. So let's get into the really good stuff then. And let's talk about the Dragonhunter. So yeah, this is the elite specialisation for the Guardian. If you weren't aware by now, if you're not, then shame on you. And TLDR of it is they're getting a longbow, they're getting ranger traps. And
well, I'm not sure they're the same as ranger traps.
Well,
they're getting traps anyway.
Well, they're getting. I'm calling them ranger traps because, in my opinion, they don't belong on the Guardian. But we're going to get to that. We're going to get into all that. So yeah, the blog post came out 2 weeks ago, and then they did a Ready Up? They did the Guardian on, I think.
Yeah, they did Ready Up on the Guardian because that's which week it was.
Yeah. And so I think after the reveal of the Chronomancer, everyone was kind of expecting big things for the Guardian, and instead, initial impressions were mixed, I'd say. I think a lot of people have issues with the name of it, mostly. And I know, Chris, you did a whole blog post on that.
Well, not a whole blog post, but certainly the start of one.
Well, yeah.
And then we went into the next part, which we may be about to talk about.
Yeah, so the way they describe the Dragonhunter is, I pulled out a quote from the blog post, a ferocious big game hunter that specialises in range combat and backline support. And I think it's this big game hunter like that, those 3 words that got most people, I think, because that immediately feels...
That sounds like what you'd apply to a ranger with a rifle to me, rather than anything Guardian-like.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
one of those more modern sport trophy hunter type things.
Yeah, exactly. And then the way they described it on Ready Up is it's not a big game hunter. They were describing it as like this kind of zealous, virtuous guardian that's out to destroy all of kind of the evil dragon ilk kind of thing. And that just doesn't come across with the way they describe it in the blog post. It's kind of these 2 differing ways of describing it. And I think that latter one just suits the Guardian so much more than describing it as this big game hunter. Instead, more is virtuous. I don't want to call it paladin, but like.
I think part of it is that the hunting out the dragons is the lore they're putting behind it, and it's sort of, I'm getting the impression that there may be an organisation which the dragon hunters are coming from. Probably the Vigil, but we'll see. While Big Game Hunter is more talking about the sort of the way the abilities behave, in that you sort of set the traps which will do various things to stop this big horrible monster from coming at you and eating you, and allowing you to shoot it down from a distance. And however, that's also a mismatch in that you have the mechanical description, which is a big game hunter on one hand, and you've got the lore description, which is the sort of inquisitor, witch hunter type thing, hunting out dragon minions, infiltrating the pact and various other organizations on the other hand. But the 2 don't really come together. None of the abilities on this side are really things that you would intuitively think about as being the sort of inquisitor, I'm going to find out the truth of what's going on side of things. So it's sort of the mechanics and the lore aren't really gelling together, I think, is one of the problems there.
Yeah, it's...
When I heard big game hunter, my first thought was, oh, he's going to hunt dragons, because that's a pretty big game.
Yeah.
But it doesn't quite fit with the Inquisition, because...
Yeah.
I think I'd been more excited if they went down that road as opposed to this big game hunter thing. I think that's the majority of people's issues, because actually when you look at the Ready Up live stream in game, it doesn't necessarily look that bad. Like, I had kind of, I wouldn't say negative impressions going into watching the stream, but kind of a little bit disappointed, I think, with what I read in the blog post. But my opinion's changed a bit. I wouldn't say I'm super excited about Dragonhunter, but I'm certainly not against it. If that makes any kind of sense.
When I think of it as almost a type of ranger, like you said, like a trapper ranger, it's like I can see that more than I can see some sort of growth of the Guardian.
Yeah, as I said in the blog post that we were talking about, is I think what we're seeing here, I mean, we've seen a bit of it with the Reaper, which we'll get to as well, is they seem to have resurrected the idea of secondary professions and the specialisations that fill in that role. And one thing that hit me earlier is we had the Chronomancer, which first came up, and okay, that feels like it's really enhancing the Mesmer, and then you've got the Dragonhunter and to a lesser extent the Reaper, which are going off in entirely different directions. But it did strike me that one could actually view the Chronomancer as a kind of Mesmer and Guardian mix, in that it's giving the Mesmer a bit more melee capability and survivability, a bit more area of effect skills in the clock well things, which are some of the things that the Guardian had, still has, that the Mesmer didn't really have. But that's a fairly subtle one. The Mesmer and Guardian already had a lot in common, so that sort of combination does come together more as being an enhancement of the Mesmer rather than going in an entirely different direction. Okay. While Guardian picking up Ranger, that is going in an entirely different direction. And I think there are some people who are going to love it, and there are some people who are just going to go, meh. But looking to the future, it's probably a good way to go, because this combination may not be to everybody's taste, but the next one might be. So
yeah, I think that's the key here. This isn't going to be the only ever elite specialisation for the Guardian ever to exist, so
yeah,
it's kind of like legendary weapons. If you hate the current ones, just wait a couple of years.
There'll be more. It'll be fine.
Yeah. You can always play the base one in the meantime if you really hate it that much.
You don't have to call it a Dragonhunter if you don't want
to. or load up the trait line for the extra stuff on the virtues and then just play it like a regular Guardian. That's also an option.
Yeah.
You'll pay
I'm
actually
excited about the longbow. The Guardian with the longbow. I'm actually excited about that.
Yeah, I do. I like the weapon. I do. I think some of the skills on it are quite cool. So let's talk about that then. Before we do, everyone in chat, don't forget to let us know your opinions on what you think about the Dragonhunter. Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Are there any things you absolutely hate? Anything you absolutely love? And we'll read them out in a bit. So, longbow. In my opinion, I think it's going to be the best range weapon for a Guardian, because scepter is just the most boring thing ever, and staff is
a flamethrower, basically.
Yeah.
It's a divine flamethrower. Boom, boom, boom. I think it's a lot of fun myself, but it's sort of a close range skirmishing weapon. It's not what you pull out when you want to snipe somebody off a distance.
It's I'd barely even call it a ranged weapon, really. It's got a bit of range, but it's not a true range weapon, I don't feel.
It's 600. That's not bad.
It's not bad. It's not
still
brilliant.
Close, but it's also, though, the certain element that if you're using the Wave of Wrath on a single target, it doesn't actually do a lot of damage. It's much more effective for just spraying out along multiple opponents and take them all down at once.
Yeah. So I'm really excited for longbow. It looks, one of my favourite skills in it is the number 3 skill I've got in the show notes, deflecting shot, where you fire an arrow and then it blocks projectiles along its path. I just think that looks so awesome.
Going to be a complicated skill shot to make,
but
really for the people who master it, then that's going to do them a lot of good.
I'm not going to be good at that.
Yeah, no. I think
I'm on Australian ping. I'm probably not going to be either, but we'll see.
I think it's definitely going to take some quite some getting used to, but it's kind of this thing that they're doing now with bringing out more skillful ways to play your profession. Because if you miss that, then you're bad. But it's so
Or
I'm instantly obviously going to
you
miss
just do
every
something
single one.
else.
Yeah.
Like tether everybody with my little tiny Ashura,
Yeah.
and then they will never find me because they'll be looking for the. Where's the guardian? Oh, I don't know. She's running around her ankles somewhere.
Ankle biter alert.
So yeah, it looks really cool. I like the number 5 skill on it as well. The one that kind of you shoot arrows and then it chains up to 5 enemies where they are. I think that looks really cool, and I can see that having some good synergy with the traps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then we get on, I suppose, the issue of how useful are the traps actually going to be on a Dragonhunter? Because I was when it first came out, I was talking to a couple of people about this, and for me to use them, I mean, they're having to replace other utility skills like save yourselves, the massive boost with all the boons, things like Wall of Reflection, the other one I've completely forgotten, AoE condition removal, that kind of thing. So I think a lot of them I can't see being much on who primarily just runs dungeons and group content, that kind of thing. Open world might be a completely different thing. I do think the one of the traps is called Light's Judgment, and it applies 25 stacks of vulnerability for 1 second when enemies are stood in it. I think that can be really powerful in kind of dungeons where you all stack together and enemies are just stationary there, so they'll basically permanently have 25 stacks of vulnerability while the trap is going off. I think that'll be really strong. Other ones, I don't know how strong they'll be. I think there's one that just cripples enemies. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. But I don't, things like that I don't see being.
I don't recall one being a cripple. I think there was one that created a ring that things would get damaged if they passed through.
That might be it.
There was one.
There's
There was one that simply did damage to whatever was standing in it, pretty much. And there was one which was a little bit weird, where it threw out these little packets which your allies could pick up to get Aegis.
Yeah.
Which is one I could see being used as an interesting way of getting extra Aegis for
I think
bad guys that have few very big attacks.
I think it's one of the longbow skills that cripples.
Yeah, longbow does cripple. I'm looking at it now. Test of Faith
Okay.
also cripples one of the traps.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the traps will have their uses, but of course you'll be finding those uses with the opportunity cost of not using some of the currently more valued utility skills that are out there. So I don't think it's just going to be a case of they're going to be totally useless because they're out competing with that. It's going to be a case of you have interesting choices. Do you want to get that extra damage, or do you want to have that I need to fix this button, which is what a lot of the utilities that Guardians normally carry nowadays are for.
Yeah, I completely agree. What I was going to say... Oh, yeah, so... moving on from traps, then we'll talk a little bit about the new virtues of the Dragonhunter. I think these look really, really cool. And overall, I think they're just more fun ways to do your virtues than you currently have, because they kind of generally do the same thing, but in a better way.
You just want the wings so you can fly.
I just want the wings.
Well, there's the wings. There's being able to throw a spear of light at somebody rather than just simply having fire on your next attack. And there's that being able to set up the deflection field rather than blocking one single attack. So yeah, those extra things, I think they're probably going to be something that's definitely worth it if you don't take anything else off the Dragonhunter, which makes me wonder if maybe they'll turn out to be a little bit too good, because you'll have everybody running around with Dragonhunter, where they may or may not be doing it for anything except the virtues. So
everyone will just want their wings.
Yeah. If they end up out competing the core specialisations that well, then they may actually prove to be a little bit too good. And I'm not sure which way you'd go there. As sort of, they're cool things. You don't really want to nerf them, but on the other hand, the other things still have to be able to compete. So it'll be interesting to see.
It is a really interesting thing. I think. My mind's just gone blank.
Yeah. Well, one thing that
back.
may help. Yeah. Well, one thing that may help there is a lot of the other traits on the line from memory are things that are fairly specifically Dragonhunter. So you may find that okay, you can get some nice, you get the extra stuff on the virtues out of it, but it may not actually, when you combine it with everything else on the Dragonhunter trait line, if you're not actually using it, then it may not actually counterbalance an entire trait line on something else, which could be your altruistic healing, it could be your the thing that makes you turn conditions into boons when you do a shout, and all the various other things that the other trait lines have. So you're getting stability when you use virtue of courage and things like that. So, I mean, those are 3 core specializations off the bat, which are also good to have. So it may or may not compete with those.
I think you're right that adding all these extra choices will help with quote-unquote endgame content. Giving people different ways, different options for building their characters.
Yeah, I was about to say it will certainly help with build diversity, because one thing I think has been a problem with Guild Wars 2, and it's been a couple of years, and without much in the way of balanced shake-ups, is a lot of the builds have turned out to be, particularly in PvE, turned out to be essentially solved problems. This is the build that you use, and this build is clearly going to do better than whatever most of the other builds, and having these interesting choices will help to counteract that.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, because I mean there'll always be the most optimal build for any given profession, but as someone like you, I mean, me and Sherry completely differ with how we approach builds. I always run the most optimal Zerka one, and Sherry's kind of the complete opposite. You just run essentially whatever you want, really. Well, not that sounds really bad. You run whatever.
My builds are unique to my playstyle.
Yeah, there you go.
I can't make that work, even though that's optimum. So I'm going to make this other thing work, and then it does. So except when I'm falling and dying, but ignore that part.
So I think
that only happens when there's lava.
Yeah. So Giant Robot Arm in chat says, I think one of the things to keep in mind is that they could be designing and basing their choices for the specializations based on the type of challenging expansion content that we haven't been told about yet. And that's a really good point.
You may want a lot of crowd control because you're going to be mobbed by a herd of giant monsters.
Yeah, I was just thinking that one thing that basically all of the new specializations we've seen so far is a heck of a lot more ability to deal with being mobbed by a lot of little monsters, and we've seen that now that we think on it on some of the videos we've seen. There was one that we saw which had this massive mob of baby raptors, and that's something which the old Mesmer would have a lot of trouble dealing with, but if you do that with a Chronomancer, you can walk in, drop a couple of wells and things like that, and you can kind of deal with that when sort of the regular Mesmer, which is generally a case if you can deal with one thing quite easily, but you can't really deal with mobs so much, that would be a lot more challenging. So if that sort of thing, if they're planning to throw more swarms at us, then they may be giving us the tools to deal with that. And Guardian, that's possibly a little bit less obvious because the Guardian already had the staff, which is a good way of dealing with swarms, as we were just discussing. Rowan, you may want to get yourself a proper staff rather than borrowing them.
I would not be caught dead with a proper staff. The only thing a staff is useful for is clearing blossoms and TA. But,
when you start getting mobbed by all of those baby raptors, you may start considering getting some of those traps or loading the staff, or doing something that helps you kill large numbers of things quickly.
Greatsword 2 is all I need. But yeah, I think what's really interesting is we're getting a lot of projectile reflection skills. If you think to the Mesmer's number 4 skill on the shield, and the Revenant's number 4 skill on the hammer. Now the Guardian's extra activated Virtue of Courage.
We may be jumping the gun there though, because Guardian and Mesmer have traditionally been fairly strong. reflection and projectile blocking professions. That's part of why I was saying earlier that Mesmer and Guardian are fairly similar, apart from the aspects where they're entirely different. So it may be just that we've seen the specializations for the professions which do that, and when we start seeing less traditionally projectile dealing with professions like Ranger and Warrior, say, and Ranger's got whirling defense, but apart from that, not so much of that stuff, then their profession, their specializations may also not have so much of that stuff. Don't recall seeing much of it on the Reaper either, but I'm maybe forgetting something.
As far as I remember. But, I mean, it's interesting. I think, I mean, if you look at just the base class, they have a fair amount already. The fact that they're adding more, I think you probably can take something away from that. It definitely feels like it's, with things like the Guardian's number 3 skill on the longbow, where you can fire one projectile to block another projectile, I'm feeling like there may be kind of big, in this challenging content they're promising, there may be big projectiles that do require blocking in order to successfully, get through. So I think that may be
they might be big enough for me to hit them.
Yeah.
well, there was that thing in the Mesmer Chronomancer videos where there was that bristleback, I think they called it, which is this big quadruped dinosaur thing. It was firing this constant stream of various spines and things, and sort of the more projectile blockers you can have against that, the better, I think.
Yep.
Or even better if it can be reflected. Up a wall of reflection, just go dunk, 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 dunk. Even better than against Baby Kaka.
A change coming to the Guardians is that their elite tomes are being reworked, because, as we know,
has that actually been confirmed, or are they still thinking about it?
I think they're just thinking about it at the moment, but I'm pretty sure it's going to go ahead, because I think the general consensus with the changes they proposed was, just do it, because nobody, let's be honest, who uses tomes on their Guardian? Do either of you two use tomes?
I was very excited to buy one, and then once I had it, it was like, dang, I want my 30 points back.
I've used them, but I've usually used them only in very specific circumstances where I needed that, felt I could use that particular thing, or when it was in a case where it wasn't really important to have the greatest amount of power, and hey, they may not be optimal, but they're still fun, even if you only get them for 20 seconds or so. Yeah. But when playing seriously, it's pretty much always the renewed focus thing, because being able to ripple any of your virtues you don't already have and then get your few seconds of invulnerability, that's generally a much better panic button than any of the elites, and a lot of the elites are essentially there as a panic button. So, and the tomes don't really do so well for getting you out of a tough situation.
Yeah, I completely agree. I really like the idea of having tomes in maybe a future specialization, and for them to kind of go away and work on what they really want to do with them. But I think
the tomes are an awesome idea thematically, but at the moment they're not really justifying being there in terms of people actually using them. So either they need to get significantly reworked into something that is a bit more useful, which could just be a matter of buffing the numbers and making it a bit more user friendly, or knock them out, or at least knock one of them out. Give the Guardians some more choice for elites then, you need focus 90%, 95% of the time.
Yeah.
I've seen the tomes used very effectively, and it'll be a shame to see them go, but in the short term it may be better to knock them out and make a tome specialization later when I've got the time to make it actually work.
Yeah. They could call it the Scholar. It would be awesome.
Oh my god.
I think somebody commented on that in the article, in fact, so...
So for those who don't know what they're changing about the tomes, Tome of Courage is being changed. Well, this is all potential. I don't think it's confirmed yet. The proposed changes are: Tome of Courage will be changed to Signet of Courage. Passive will be a PB AOE heal every 10 seconds. A bit like the Guardians Warriors healing Signet.
Except for multiple people, not just
for
yourself.
multiple people.
Right.
And then it's active.
And it's not in your heal slot, so all of the healing.
Yeah, exactly. and its active will be Light of Deliverance, which is the number 5 skill from the Tome of Courage, which essentially just heals up to 5 people all the way to full.
I think
Yeah.
I saw somewhere that it was a 50,000 point heal rather than just being straight to full, but it's effectively to full in
It's-
most circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd be impressed if I saw somebody managing to get over 50,000 hit
Yeah.
points.
I'd be impressed.
Yeah, so that sounds like it could be useful for me actually, because there's a running joke going around GuildMag that I die a lot in dungeons, and I don't know where this comes from.
No.
And without needing armor.
So I might pick that one up. And then the other one is Tome of Wrath is changing to a shout called Feel My Wrath, and essentially it will grant quickness and fury, which is going to be OP for Zerkers like myself. I think, doesn't the Guardian... I forgot, I keep saying the Guardian. Warrior... I'm pretty sure one of the Warrior Elites does that as well. I'm pretty sure that's a Signet that does it as well. I can't remember.
I
I'm
haven't
not
played
sure
my
actually.
warrior in ages.
Yeah, I'm not sure off the top of my head it gives quickness. It gives a whole bunch of other burns, but I'm not sure it gives quickness. It might. Warrior's the profession I actually play the least at the moment in Guild Wars 2, so haven't had much experience with that.
So yeah, so those are super exciting. I can't wait to see what comes of all that. Do we have anything else we want to bring up about the Dragonhunter before we move on?
I think we just
No.
about covered it.
I think I got everything. Yeah.
All right.
I'm good.
So it's reaping time. I'm glad I said that right.
Mwah.
I'm not. So we're going to talk about the latest Necro Elite specialization, the Reaper, and so I just want to preface this by saying I think it looks so awesome, and I haven't played a Necro really in Guild Wars 2 since it launched. I played one during the beta weekends, thought and never really picked it up again. But since seeing the Reaper, I've actually gone out and bought another character slot and made a Necro just to be a Reaper when it comes out.
That's how it starts, and
so-
sooner or later you're gonna have 24 of them.
No, I'm not going to have
Well, I had something similar with a thief actually, in that the thief was a profession which I was always not particularly interested in, and at one point I went and got the profession slot and started playing just to see how, just to get the completeness of having all 8 professions, and it actually ended up being one of my favourites. So sometimes they surprise you.
Right.
There you go then. So
It's not right at the top, but it's up there.
So I'm super excited about this. It looks so badass. I mean, come on, just when you enter that Reaper Shroud and everything just goes Okay, so let's talk about it. So the Reaper then is getting a greatsword as his new weapon, and it's all about these kind of hard-hitting, big wind-up AoE attacks, kind of inspired by kind of big kind of evil villains like Pyramid Head, and what's the other one they gave in the example?
Jason Voorhees.
The labyrinthine horror.
Yeah. So
From
basically,
Friday the 13th movies.
yeah, so all those kind of things went into inspiring it, and it's kind of, it really shows, I think, in the greatsword. So it's kind of standard animation. Its number 1 skill is kind of quite a fairly big wind up compared to normal greatsword hits, but it hits a lot harder, and I think it applies chill on the 3rd one if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the from what I've seen, the animation in that 3rd swing, so the whole sword freezes up before the blow lands, which is quite a nice
that's
animation.
Yeah, they really have done a really good job on the animation side of it for the Reaper. Everything just looks so awesome.
I was excited.
Yeah.
I am excited.
Right.
Because one of my mains is a Necro, so...
So yeah.
Yeah,
so
for me, the Necro is about number 7 in my list, so just above the Warrior, but depending on what the other specialisations are, I could see that climbing a few spots.
Yeah.
The Reaper does look like a lot of fun.
It really does. And so the Reaper's all about kind of bringing your enemies to you rather than you going to them, and I think that's a really awesome take on it. A lot of people were like, oh, well, Necros don't really have much mobility, not much survivability, and they were kind of a bit miffed that the Reaper
That's true.
didn't provide that. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, I guess, when we get into it. But I personally don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, one thing there which may or may not be listed to talk about earlier talk about later. But one thing that got mentioned is the blood magic changes, which means that you can actually steal health while in Life Shroud now, rather than just sort of disappearing off into the ether. And I could see that being a big jump to Necromancer's viability in general, because previously it's sort of a case if you go into Death Shroud, you've got that sort of secondary health bar, but once you drop out of it, you're still going to be on whatever health you were initially, and basically the only real benefit of that extra health bar in terms of survivability is giving a little bit more time for your healing skill to recharge. But with the
that's how I use it.
yeah, that's how I use it too myself. But with the proposed blood magic changes, then you do actually have more of that ability to actually heal your main health bar and bring that back up while you're in Life Shroud. And I think that in itself is going to be big.
Yeah, I completely agree. And so, I mean, we can talk about this a bit now then. The thing about specializations, there was a Reddit post about this, is that elite specializations shouldn't be seen as like upgrades to your base class. They should just be seen as alternative ways to play them. So
yes,
it's
secondary professions even.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So although things like necros don't have that much mobility and there's arguably not that much survivability, I mean, I say arguably because I know Taz, who wrote the article we were talking about earlier, plays a thief and a necro. And he finds being on his necros so much easier to survive in dungeons and that kind of things just because of the bigger health pools that necros have compared to thieves.
Well, I was about to say he is comparing the thief, and thief is a lot of fun when you play well and get in the zone, but you really don't want to miss those dodges and such when you're playing thief.
Yeah.
You will be splattered and die horribly. If you do well, it's awesome, but if you're doing poorly, you die horribly.
Yeah. And
I've always had a lot of fun with my necro.
Guild Wars 1.
Yeah,
she's a little squishy, you know. I think they're a little squishy as a class, but I've always traded her to steal health from other things. So she's my little vampire.
That's kind of always been the necros thing. It's like a light armor class, but big health pool and kind of a secondary health pool on top of that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see how they'll play out when they get into melee range, because they are still just a light armor class, and you know, even heavy armor classes get wrecked.
I always run double daggers and wells on my necro, so I'm always close range anyway. So it's like, oh, cool, another weapon to use close range.
Yeah, I don't do it all the time, but I've done that myself and found that the Necromancer was reasonably survivable in melee doing that, partially because of the trait which makes the wells vampiric, and that if you drop one of those carefully, that can give you a lot of health back.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the greatsword. Now, the thing we haven't talked about in the greatsword is the number 5 skill, the one that pulls enemies to you. I think that looks so awesome. I think it really seals the thematic, like, you come to me rather than me go to you kind of thing.
Right.
With the Reaper.
The whole thing feels like an inexorable. Like, it's just coming for you. I really like that they captured that.
Yeah, from memory, the Labyrinthine Horror does something similar, and there are a couple of other fairly nasty boss fights out there which use similar mechanics. One that we've had a lot of fun with is Devious Tessa's thing, although she teleports as well, but we've had her come up at guild bounties a lot more often than statistically probable.
So the next thing that's changing with the Reaper is they get their own form of Death Shroud called Reaper's Shroud, and this it's kind of a little bit the opposite of what the Greatsword does. It's all about swinging side attacks that are a bit quicker than the Greatsword attacks are.
I'm not sure it's actually that they're quicker. It's just that they're swinging across such a wide area, and they may be a little bit quicker, but they're still reasonably slow and well telegraphed attacks.
Yeah, they are.
You see that side coming for you.
They're still comparatively slow, but they're quicker than the actual Greatsword attacks are, and you use these auto attacks to regen your life force, as opposed to in current Death Shroud it's number 4, Sherry?
Yeah, it's number 4.
Number 4.
Life Siphon, I think it is. Was it Life Transfer?
Yeah.
And that However, that's something you can only do every 40 seconds or so. So it's not going. It's not
Yeah.
going. It doesn't really do much to keep your life force up. In my experience, it's sort of it stops you from draining down further, but it's
Yeah,
very hard,
that's how I
rare
use
that you
it.
actually do that and come up ahead afterwards. While it's more of a case of, well, I'm going to do lots of damage over a wide area, while the cut the attack one on the scythe when you're in the new one, that looks like it can actually be used if you're not under too much pressure to basically stay in the form indefinitely. You can at
Yeah.
least keep it so that you're not dropping on your general loss of life force that happens over time, and it may even be possible to keep it up under some light pressure, especially if you've got some other things boosting up your life force while you're going.
Hmm.
Yeah, there was some theory crafting somewhere. I can't quite. If I remember it, I'll bring it back up. So other skills you get as in Reaper Shroud are you get. I think it's your number 2 skill is the one where you charge forward a little bit.
Yep.
Which looks quite cool.
The Reaper Copter.
Spins around.
Yeah. I'm not sure I like that name.
And then your number 3 skill, and this is a big one, your number 3 skill grants stability while you're in Reaper's Shroud, which I think is quite useful, especially if you're in melee range and
Yes.
knocked about.
And with those big telegraphed attacks and something that Necros haven't had now, having to be in Reaper Shroud do it means that it's sort of not as useful as some stabilities that other class professions have. But it's stability on a profession that doesn't have a lot of stability, so I'm sure some people will be relieved to see that, even if they might still want more.
Yeah, well, I think the stability stays after you end the Reaper Shroud.
Yeah,
I think that's what I
apparently
heard,
it
yeah.
didn't in the video, but they're rejigging it so it doesn't. Well,
Yeah,
have already
that's what he
rejigged
had.
it.
Yeah.
The current versions.
Yeah.
So that should be good. And Giant Robot Arm in chat says it does look like you can sustain a lot easier with the Reaper Shroud. I think this Reaper Shroud is kind of one of the big pillars of the Reaper as a class, kind of being able to be in it a lot more than you can just be normally in Death Shroud.
Mm-hmm.
And while you're doing it with a new blood magic, you can be healing your own health bar too. So I think that's one that's actually going to have a lot of survivability, even though there's not a lot of it appearing directly up front. It's just the way the life force and the blood magic changes will interact. I think if you go Reaper with blood magic, then you're going to be hard to kill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what I need. Hard to kill.
And on top of that, you'll be
maybe not as much as some people.
Yeah. And on top of that, you'll be doing tons of damage as well, because their skills hit like absolute trucks, and they've got 2 execute skills just on their base weapons. So the Reaper Scythe in the Reaper Shroud. I'm saying Reaper so much. In the Reaper Shroud, the Scythe 5 skill is just, well, not your standard execute, but just basically does more damage if targets are below 50% health, I think. And then on your Greatsword, your number 2 skill will recharge quicker if your targets are below 50% health. So it really feels like going to be this kind of big powerhouse, hit you like a truck.
It's a punisher at the end of it all.
Absolutely. I'm really excited for it. So a big thing that Reapers do is they use chill quite a lot, and they throw out all their things, and I think there's a trait where
chill on fear.
Yeah, chill on fear. I think, is there a trait where you do more damage to chilled people? I can't quite remember.
There's one that means that, which is an interesting one, which they've kind of stolen off Guild Wars 1 a bit, although it works in a different fashion, is the one where if you score a critical hit on somebody who's chilled, then you get area of effect damage around them, and this little cold nova, cold burst type animation when it triggers. So kind of like having the fire rune going, except it only works if they're already chilled, and it has a recharge of about 7 seconds or so. I think is what its recharge is. So yeah, so you get extra damage on chilled targets using that. There may be another one which is just a straight up damage boost, but that's one that sticks in mind because it's fun and interesting, and Cold Nerve is going off everywhere.
I'm looking at the traits
Chilling
now.
Victory.
Thing I was talking about outside attacking faster, it's actually a trait in Reaper Shroud. You get 15% attack
that's
speed
right.
as one of the Grandmaster traits. That's what I was thinking about earlier. So yeah, I think so. One thing
They want it to be slow, but not too slow.
yeah,
They have the option to make it faster. It was actually when they said in the blog post that they were slowing down the greatsword, I was actually worried. It's like, oh, am I going to be able to hit anything, or is everything going to dodge away?
yeah.
Well, I think that's part of the intended weaknesses, is that it is
Mhm.
going to be easy to dodge away from them and some other things. And yes, they can chill you and pull you back, but they need to do that in order to keep you engaged. And a lot of other professions which are a bit more range oriented and have high mobility, if they can manage to dodge those chills and such, then they're going to be hard for the Reaper to actually pin down and kill.
Right.
That's your elementalists, your thieves, all those other type things which go, I'm going to be over here now.
And
So
blink on the
I
master.
don't, yeah, I don't like being in front of this. I'm out of here. Boing.
The shouts too.
Yes, let's talk about the shouts.
Yes.
So this is a really interesting take on shouts. They're now kind of damage skills essentially, as opposed
Yes.
to buffing
Right.
buffing your other people. I think it works quite well actually. I think thematically, being able to shout your enemies to death is always going to be fun.
Well, as will come up in more detail later, I was actually thinking of that as being a case of you combine the damage with the animations. They actually seem more to be a bit of kind of spell type things, but sort of I'm going to blast everything in the area, and there's a bit of a casting animation there. But because they're labelled as shouts, that means they've got the benefit of shout-related traits and things. And you get to say scary things as you're using them, which is always a plus.
Yeah.
That's
It
why
also-
I was interested.
Yeah. On the other hand, that could also be a balancing factor because it makes it clearer to opponents in PvP just what you've just done.
Hmm.
People will recognise those shouts and go, well, I know what you're doing, while some of the other area effect things like Guardian, Smite Condition, things like that, it's not always so inherently obvious what they've just done because you're only basing off the animation, and some of the animations are quite similar, but when the Reaper is shouting, your soul is mine! It's a bit hard to
Yeah,
make that something else.
it's just another way to telegraph what this
Yeah.
insane
And
death
that's
creature is
something-
doing.
Yeah, and that's something the Reaper is a fairly strong feature of it, is what it's doing is highly telegraphed. You know what's about to hit you. The horror movie aspect of it is that if the Reaper has done their job well, you know what's about to hit you and you can't dodge it.
So there's something I was going to bring up, and it's completely gone from my mind. It was just Chris doing an impression of one of the shouts, and it's just completely zoomed past my head. So one thing I wanted to bring up is an interesting Reddit post I saw yesterday, and it's talking about so the Reaper uses chill a lot, but the new bosses are immune to chill in things like Silver Wastes. So it's kind of questioning how Reaper's going to be able to interact with that, especially in Heart of Thorns. So I just thought it was a really interesting point to bring up.
Yeah, that is an interesting one because it's sort of like some of the issues which have been coming up in some of the second season story missions where, pretty much everything you fight is not counted for any of those on-kill traits and wounds and things, which basically makes them effectively useless when you're in one of those instances. And in the case of chill on those various bosses, well, being immune to chill, well, for the Reaper, that's simply being immune to chill and not having that slow effect is probably not a big deal because most of those bosses aren't going to be trying to dodge anyway. But it does mean that all of those chill-related traits are basically going to be useless against them. So that could be a bit of a pain.
It definitely could be.
No more chilling victory.
So the top comment in this Reddit post is so obviously most of the Defiance stuff is being removed in favor of these new Defiance break bars. So it kind of depends on how Chill is going to interact with those break bars. If when you apply it, obviously it'll take a chunk off, and then you'll be able to get some Chill through eventually. Hopefully.
Yep, that could be interesting. Yes.
So hopefully
It'll only be a little bit compared to days and things like that. But on the other hand, you have a lot more access to it, especially if you're landing on every third swing.
Yeah, exactly. So there's the potential for you to potentially be able to chunk down Defiance bars quite a lot.
Or just keep it at a sort of continuously wavering level so that other people, when they decide it's going to go stonk, they're not having to do so from scratch.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. So one thing in chat that oh god, I can't. Successful, but with a V in there somewhere. I'm so sorry. So they say Reaper shouts plus Rune the Soldier. Can we be seeing Reaper bunkers in PvP? What do you guys think? So for those of you who don't know, Runes of the Soldier basically remove conditions from allies.
Soon to be Runes of the Trooper, apparently.
Yes, that was an interesting point. The fact that they're being renamed. I saw Twitch chat was like Warrior Specialization confirmed to be called Soldier.
I suspect it may actually be that Soldier has always been a sort of more flavorful term for the heavy arm professions, which is your warrior and the guardian. So, and in that case, as things currently stand, that makes sense because it buffs shouts, and currently only the soldier professions have shouts, but now that the Reaper is getting them too, then that link is no longer there.
Yeah. I could definitely see. I mean, I don't play PvP that much. I know, Chris, you do a fair amount of PvP.
A little bit. I think there are people out there who are still a lot more. I sort of dabble in PvP and play a few games every day, but often only one actually get the dailies I'm out. But it's still fun, but I don't tend to sit there and play 5-10 matches a day like some people do. So, but I've had some regular necros which can be pains to bring down. If they make good use out of Death Shroud and have a lot of Death Shroud renewing stuff, I can see Reapers being a real pain to get down, especially if they're traded for it and more to the point, have the appropriate amulet. I can see that being a bunker.
Yeah,
definitely.
I can as well. They've got, I think, quite a lot innately that would suit it. A lot of the shouts, things like their elite shout gives you resistance, which means immune to all conditions. So I mean that in itself would be pretty useful on a bunker. And
especially being hit by multiple enemies.
Yeah, exactly. So and just the sheer amount of kind of chill they can apply to kind of against enemies while they're trying to bunker down the point, that kind of thing. I can really see it working.
Yeah. One of the things with PvP is if you can 3v1 on a point and stop somebody taking it even for a minute or so, if you can do that and stay alive, even if you die in the end, that can win games because, well, it's 3 people on you, then it's 4v2 on the rest of the map, and that's going to hurt somebody.
That can,
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm just really excited for the Reaper. I'm more excited for the Reaper than I am the Dragonhunter. Like, I'm more excited for a class I never play than my main.
Well, it's an entirely new experience. It'll almost be like Revenant all over again. 2 new classes.
I get 2 new classes. Oh my god!
Yeah, which is actually another thought I had, which is a nice self-save, which I didn't realise until afterwards. Is one of the things I'm thinking is if they continue this trend with the Necromancer of giving them a new Death Shroud with each specialisation, then there's a certain element of thematic link there with the Revenant, and the Revenant has their various legends that they tap into, while the Necromancer, yes, they only have one at a time, but if they've got their basic one, then each specialisation brings up a new one, then that's sort of a case of instead of having 2 that you switch between, it's like having I've got my regular thing, which is what I do, and then I've got the Death Shroud, which could be different for each specialisation, which is sort of an equivalent to the legends without being a legend all the time. So sort of a part way between a more conventional profession and the Revenant, which is all sorts of weirdness.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Lots of different
so,
flavors of
yeah.
death.
Yes, that's so.
So Blue Blob in chat says, I'm more excited for the Dragonhunter than the Reaper, and I'm main Necro. I like the look of the animations, but I prefer how the longbow works. So yeah, it's kind of,
Yeah.
people like different things. I think
Exactly.
that's the key thing, is that not everyone's going to like every elite specialization they reveal.
That's true.
It's
Yeah.
going to be very much, yeah, and they're not designed to. You know, there'll be more in whenever when it's ready.
Yes.
So
What I'm excited for is seeing how all of these new specializations work together in
Yeah.
the team on a map.
yeah,
Because right now
there
we're
was-
just seeing them singly.
There was a really good kind of theory crafting going on with Mesmer's applying alacrity to Reapers, because obviously the slow animation,
Right.
Yep.
which could turn out to be really OP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think alacrity actually speeds up the animations, though. I think it may only speed up the recharges. But even then,
Yeah,
speeding
even
up
then.
those execute type skills, sort of even Great Sword too. If you're speeding up how often that hits,
Yeah.
again, it's going to hurt somebody.
Yeah. So yeah, that is the Reaper. Do we have anything else we want to bring up about it? Are we all? I'm not going to say
I'm
that.
just
Are we all-
excited.
I think there are other things we can say. We've still got the follow-up article to go, so let's hold off on some of the other things. We don't spill everything that we might be saying then.
Yeah. So just to point out, that's it for all the 3 specializations we get this week. These 3 weeks. Next week, they're announcing something else, which has potential to be really exciting. They mentioned on the Reaper live stream not to miss Ready Up. So, do we get?
Which implies that it's likely to be PvP focused. So that could be where they're revealing one of the big new PvP changes, or possibly WPW changes. They could be showing off Borderlands a bit more. But then again, that isn't so big because we've already seen more or less that. So
Right.
probably not Stronghold either because we've already tested that. So it could be
mystery.
something that, yeah. It could be something like either a GVG version of Stronghold or something like that.
I was going to say it
Stronghold
could be the
Promotes.
GVG stuff.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah,
Or things like New
Or even-
Guild, anything New Guild related,
Yeah.
halls.
The guild
Like
halls and
yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, again, no, I wouldn't think of new guild halls as being PvP
Yeah.
related unless you're fighting in them, which is, of course, what part of what they are used for with GVG and Guild
Right.
Wars 1. So,
right.
Yeah.
You-
I mean, they showed the Dragonhunter whole specialization on Ready Up, which wasn't necessarily just PvP focused. So it could just be that
yes.
they really want to tell us something this week, and Ready Up is just the next stream scheduled for it.
Possible.
That could be true.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if it turns out to be PvE focused, then they could have delayed things a week or so, or did things a week early. That's a little harder than delaying things a week early, because then people have to squeeze what they were doing into less time. But
Right.
they probably could have delayed it a week later in order to get the PvE thing on POI rather than Ready Up. So my gut feeling is probably more likely to be PvP than PvE. I may be surprised. You may be right, but we'll see.
It could
Now taking bets.
be the new World v World stuff.
I will not be twerking anything.
Yeah. No. So yeah, we've actually covered the last 2 things we were going to talk about as we were talking about the Reaper. So we're pretty much done for this episode. So big thank you.
Surprise.
Yay! So big thank you to Sherry and Chris for joining me this week. If you've only just tuned in, then our VOD will be on guildmag.com later. If you are not watching this live, remember we are indeed live every Sunday, 10 a.m. GMT / 11 a.m. if you're in the UK on twitch.tv/guildmag. The info is right in that bottom corner down there, somewhere past Sherry's face.
We need to move.
And yeah, next week we'll be talking about whatever it is they reveal on Ready Up. Don't know who we're going to have on yet. As I said earlier, Casey probably won't be here. Sherry and Chris might be back. We don't know. It's a mystery. So
A roulette wheel of guests.
um,
You'll have to go through the
Which
staff.
lunatic will we
you
have this
haven't-
time?
Which staff members have not been on yet? That's
yeah.
And for
So
whom this isn't oh god o'clock.
So big thank you to everyone who's joined us in chat. Remember, we are at GuildMag looking for editors and writers. If you're interested, go to guildmag.com/join. You don't need any experience. You just need a workable knowledge of the English language and a passion for Guild Wars. That's it. So yeah, I will see you in a week's time, and these guys will hopefully see you at some point in the future. So
Yay.
thanks for joining us, everybody. Bye.
Read on the chronometrist.
Bye.
Bye bye.